Welcome kindreds, it's Jessica the Story Witch, and this is another video for my A to Z of Modern Witchcraft series that I'm making on this channel. And this video is L is for light and shadow, and I think it's really important that those things do come as a pair, which is what I will get onto in this video. So I'm going to start off by reading you a story. It's a children's story. Sorry, the light's reflecting off it. This was an old library copy called The Coming of the Night, and this is kind of setting the tone for what I want to talk about really here. It's by James Riordan and Jenny Stow, and it's based on a Yoruba Creation Myth from West Africa. Long ago, when the earth was new, it was forever day. No moon, no stars, no night hunting owls and leopards. No dawn to tell the people when to rise, no dusk to tell them when to sleep. The land was bathed in bright sunshine all the time. One day, the great river goddess Yomoya sent her daughter Aji to marry a handsome earth chief, Odudua. I'm probably really butchering these African names, I'm so sorry. Aji left her shady home in the river's depths and went to live in the land of the shining day. At first, Aji was happy in her new home and she loved her husband dearly. But after a while, she began to tire of the unrelenting sun. She told her husband, "This sunlight hurts my eyes. How I long for the cool shadows of my mother's home beneath the waves. How I wish that night would come." Odudua was surprised. "What is night?" he asked. "Night," said Aji wistfully, "is a cool veil that curtains the day's warm bed. It is the gentle sigh that calms a restless heart. It is the welcome rest that refreshes a weary soul." "Where is night?" asked Odudua. "Only in my mother's realm beneath the waves can night be found," says Aji. At once the young chief went down to the river to talk to Yomoya's messengers, Crocodile and Hippopotamus. "Go to Yomoya," he said, "and ask her for night. Say it will make her daughter happy." He's a very good husband. Crocodile and Hippopotamus dived into the watery depths. They swam through the coral reefs, the gloomy caves and dark grottos. Finally, they came to a glittering palace. Yomoya herself came out to greet them. Bowing low before her, they explained their mission. Her daughter longed for the shades of night. Straight away, the goddess filled a sack full of night for them to take back to earth. "But heed my warning," Yomoya told them. "Do not open the sack until you reach my daughter. Only she can control the spirits of night." Swimming through the swirling waters, Crocodile and Hippopotamus bore the sack between them until they reached dry land. Once on the bank, they stopped to rest and dry themselves in the sun's warm rays. All at once, they heard the strangest noises coming from the sack. They had never heard the sounds of night before, and it made them quake with fear. "Let's throw it back into the river," said Hippopotamus. "No, let's open it up and see what is inside," said Crocodile. With that, he undid the knot with his sharp teeth and pulled open the heavy sack. Whoosh! Out rushed the night insects, midges, moths, gnats and spiders. Whoosh! Out rushed the night birds, owls, jars and nightingales. Whoosh! Out rushed the night animals, leopards, lions, bats and bullfrogs. All these night creatures terrified Crocodile and Hippopotamus. They dived deep into the muddy waters, then reappeared in mid-river with just their eyes and noses above the swell. Argy was waiting on the bank, sheltering beneath a leafy palm. The moment she saw the swarms of insects, flocks of birds, and herds of animals, she uttered a low cry. All at once, the spirits of night grew calm, and a hush descended on the land. The gentle hum of insects spread throughout the bush. Twinkling stars gazed down from a dark blue sky, and moonbeams trod a silvery path across the waves. Owls hovered above woodland glades, and leopard eyes gleamed behind the trees. The cool air grew fragrant with the scent of night. A murmuring breeze rustled the forest leaves. Argy smiled. Now she knew she would find peace in her husband's land, and she fell into a deep sleep. When she awoke, Argy gave her new home special gifts. To the brightest star shining in the sky, she said, "You shall be the morning star, announcing the birth of each new day." To the cockerel crowing on the wattle fence, she said, "You shall be the guardian of night, warning us when day is breaking." To the birds chirping all about her, she said, "You shall sing most sweetly at dawn, waking people with your song." And ever since then, Morning Star, the cockerel, and the birds all announced the coming of each new day, but only after the restful sleep of night. And I wanted to share that story because it brings into relief what I want to talk about in this video, which is when we often talk about light and shadow, there can be a tendency to prefer one over the other. And usually that is the light over the shadow. As in the story, if it is day all the time and there is no night, then we can't have that restful time. All those creatures and wonderful, powerful things that are in the night cannot be. And in the same way with our light and our shadow, we have that flow, that powerful flow between our light and our shadow. We have our outer world connections, our kind of conscious connections, and then we have our subconscious. We have those things which are within us, which we see with our intuition, you know, that we learn from deep within us. So we have kind of outward looking and we have inward looking. I wrote a blog once about my personal kind of journey with shadow, because what I have found personally, that there was an awful lot of power and strength that I had kind of shoved into my shadow, because as a young girl growing up in sort of the late 70s, early 80s, it was not acceptable to be loud, to take up space, to be powerful, to be strong. It was not well thought of. And so into my shadow I put those strengths, as well as some of the things, you know, like fear and things that we'd rather not confront in ourselves, and so we put that into the shadow. And also, I'll link that post down below if you're interested in reading about it. It tells my story of how I started to be able to tap back into that shadow and being able to get those things back out and reclaim that power from my shadow. But I also wanted to talk about how definitely our strengths are in our shadow, but also the things that we fear, and not just the things that we fear as individual humans, but we have a collective shadow too. We have a collective. This is why I think when people start talking about shadows and they are honest about the things that are in shadow for them, there are very, very many similarities, because part of being human, and we share that experience of humanity, is that we are all fearful. We are all ashamed. We are all less than honest sometimes. And shadow work is part of addressing those things which are in the shadows. And some of them, like I said, like power, sometimes we can call that part back into ourselves, and we can kind of integrate that into our whole self, into our conscious self as well. I think the roots still remain in the shadow, but also we can be honest about the things which are still in shadow for us, the things we haven't quite come to grips with yet, you know, the things we're still working on. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I feel like we have a kind of personal shadow, but there is definitely very much a kind of collective vibe. People fear that their shadows are much worse than everybody else's shadows. It's not true. We all have this, you know, we all feel like this sometimes. And if we don't, there's definitely things that people do that we can do to kind of not have to confront that shadow side of ourselves. And a big one that people do quite often is to project that. So they will project the shadow aspects of themselves onto somebody else. So it'll be the things that they find the most grating in other people are actually the things that they've really got a big proportion of within themselves, you know. So if they see somebody being sort of vindictive perhaps, or bringing other people down, and they watch that and they're like, that's so awful, that person is doing that, then there will definitely be aspects of that within that person as well themselves. And that can be a really good way of kind of finding out what is in your shadow if you're not quite sure, kind of shining a little light on the shadow. And we definitely have a kind of dappled light situation going on as well, you know, where there are things in our shadows which we can see, but it's as if the light's shining through the trees, you know, you can kind of see it, but you haven't quite made it all out yet. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to speak about in this video a little bit is polarity, which is why I wanted to share that story of night and day. People talk about light and shadow as a polarity, and what can be as a binary. What can be very difficult about that, and I've talked about binaries before in videos in this series, I know, is that when you start assigning binaries to things, then very often it's easy to slip into saying that one of those things is good and one of those things is bad. This definitely happens with light and shadow, you know, light is good, shadow is bad. That is one of those sort of setups of binaries. And then you're on a very slippery slope, you know, white is good, black is bad, you know, let's not go there. Male is good, female is bad. It's not the truth. It is an oversimplistic way of seeing the world. And like I said, balance is not about splitting things into polarities, but it is about the flow between those two points on a spectrum. You know, they're not, they include each other, they are linked to each other, they are the mirror of each other, but not in a good and bad setup kind of way. That is the sort of thinking that came in when we had a patriarchal religion which said this is the one and only way of doing things, you do this, anything that is not this is evil. We start getting the devil, we start getting things that before then were just not part of the human consciousness. And when we talk about balance and saying, you know, we must have balance, but people are like, yeah, but we don't want balance between good and bad. No, okay, but we need flow and we need understanding. We don't want to be still and stagnant. We need night, we need day. Positive and negative, that's another brilliant one, which people are like, yes, positive, negative, let's have all the positive, but we won't have the negative, without realising or even kind of comprehending that without one is nothing without the other. They do not work without the other. So, and I'll link Drew's video again. I know I've linked this one before where she talks about this, about positive and negative. If you think of a magnet, and you know, you've got a magnet, like a bar magnet, and you have the positive and you have the negative, or you could have the positive at the top and the negative at the bottom, because up above and below have also got the same kind of polarities. We just like to do this. It's our mindset that has been stuck in that kind of Abrahamic patriarchal way of thinking for such a long time, is that we're like, oh, well, one must be good, one must be bad. It's not. So if you have a magnet and you've got the positive and the negative ends of the magnet, then they obviously push, pull. They both are powerful in their own way. One is not good and one is not bad. And when we see it in a magnet, we're like, oh yeah, that's okay, I can deal with it. But as soon as we start applying positive and negative to energies or other things like within ourselves, then positive is very much a desirable thing and negative becomes an undesirable thing, something which we want to get rid of. Whereas actually, like in a photograph, when you have the negative, and if you're a younger person, you might not know what I'm talking about now. When photographs first came out, you will know, I'm sure. They would be the photograph, and then you would have the negatives, which would be like a little strip, which is like the light opposite of the photo. So it would be like the photo in negative in the other side. And that is where the image of the photo was contained within it. So that is how it is. The image is contained within the negative and the positive. And I definitely feel like I'm rambling, and perhaps I will come back to talk about this when I'm having a bit more of a more lucid and better explanation type of day. Mercury is retrograde at the moment, which is probably which could be affecting me. I would be better perhaps putting my energy into looking inward, using my intuition, than looking outward and using that kind of connection with you guys. But I didn't want to make no videos through this time, so hopefully you will understand what I mean, and perhaps I will come back to this in the future and talk about that whole polarity. We need that push-pull, we need the two opposing forces, otherwise we are still, we are stagnant, we are not alive, we're not vibrant. So that is basically what I'm getting at with light and shadow. We need light, we need shadow. We need to dig into shadow sometimes and bring things into light. Sometimes we need to look at those things that are in light and think, actually, are these good things? Are these things that are serving me? And perhaps they need to be retired for a little while. Shadow also is a place for things to rest, the night time, so we can put things there to rest. And on that note, I did have a little thing I wanted to read you just to finish. I'm hoping this video is not going to be too long, especially as it hasn't been particularly concise. But this is from this Many Moons workbook, which I'm really enjoying. It is a workbook for the second half of this year, which is 2018, if you're watching this later on. So it's July to December, but they do them for each year, and they've separated into two parts. So volume 2 is the second half of the year. I bought mine from Beth at Little Red Tarot because I'm in the UK. I think it was originally from, the times are American time, so I'm assuming that it's published in America, so if you want to get it over there, it might even be easier to get it. But as part of the information for the full moon in Aquarius, which is the lunar eclipse, there was this lovely message from Mother Moon. And it says, "Dear beloved, though you may not see me fully right now in your night sky, because the moon's eclipsed, I am still here in full bloom. In fact, I am always in full bloom. I am always big, round, whole and complete, 360 degrees of lunar magic, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But from your view on planet Earth, I appear to cycle through different stages. To you, sometimes I'm completely absent. Other times I'm a crescent, other times a semicircle, and other times still a glowing orb. But my truth is that I am always whole, whether or not the sun's light is fully shining on me. This is what I want you to remember as you sit in the darkness, both literally and figuratively. In the same way that I am already whole, whether or not the sun's light is reflecting off of me, you too are already whole. Your wholeness does not come from being seen and honoured by others. It comes from seeing and honouring yourself. In what ways are you not seeing and honouring the wholeness that is you, the beauty that is you, the miracle that is you? In what ways are you negating and shaming yourself because you are in a period of darkness? In what ways are you denying yourself rest and replenishment because you believe you have to work hard to deserve it? In what ways are you participating in your own victimization by placing yourself in situations and relationships that are oppressive to your humanity? In what ways are you holding healing and replenishment at arm's distance because you believe you need to be performing all the time? Very much like the story I read at the opening, you know, always day, always day. Can you imagine, beloved, how it would be if the sun's light shone fully on me every single day? Can you imagine how exhausting that would be, to never have times of slowness, quietness and darkness, to always be shining, always be accomplishing, always be giving myself to everyone else while asking nothing in return? Yes, you can imagine, because you do that to yourself too. There is great wisdom in the dark, beloved, in the mystery, in the outwardly inactive. Allow yourself to rest now. Give yourself permission to be, to just be, for yourself and for the collective, for as long as you need it. The work will still be there when you are ready to return, and you will be better resourced to do it, with newfound energy, compassion, creativity, humour, generosity, power, empathy, patience, pleasure, awe, and innovation. And those are all things which can be hiding in our shadows. They are things that we do not have access to because we are always on. We are always shining that light on ourselves. We are always performing. And if we can stop the outwardly active and turn in to our intuition, our inner learning, our inner knowing, and be inwardly active. So to the outside world, it looks like we are still, like we are doing nothing. But there is a lot going on inside. It is like the winter. We need the winter. We need that time of energy inside. And that is why light and shadow are not pole opposites. Sorry, my phone's trying to die on me. They're not pole opposites which are either or. We're not, our task in this lifetime is not to drag everything into the light. Sure, sometimes we need to shine a light on some of the things that are hidden in shadows because that is where a lot of our power, our innovation, our creativity can be lurking. But it is not a case of let everything be light. Let there be light. That's interesting, actually. That point just came to me then when I was saying that. It's like in the Abrahamic creation myth, initially there was darkness, and then, you know, God divided the light from the dark and made night and day. But in that Yoruba creation myth, originally everything was light, and then night was given by the goddess. I think that's really interesting. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Warmest blessings, and I will see you very soon.